Hello, welcome to my lecture here, and we're going to talk about communism in the Eastern Bloc. It's an aesthetic to some, while it's an inescapable hell to others. So that's right, my name is Nima Shalom, and let's get into it. So what's the goal of the lecture? So first we're going to take a look at what Americans currently think about communism/socialism. Now, this lecture is more specifically focused to how Americans think of this. This is my target audience, Americans, specifically younger Americans. But hey, anyone that sees this video, you're welcome to be part of the target audience. So we're going to learn about where the Eastern Bloc is, what countries are in it, and learn about different towns in the Eastern Bloc. And we're going to analyze how life has changed in these towns 30 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, or in some cases, how it hasn't changed at all. And the goal is to convince the listeners here that communism is not the solution to problems in America. So, let's get started by taking a look at support of communism. Now, is the younger generation actually more in favor of communism than it has been in the past? Well, turns out, yes. So this survey is done by YouGov, and it surveyed 2,100 millennials, which is 23 to 38-year-olds. And so 50% view capitalism in a good way. Now, that's not too surprising to me because there's a lot of different problems we have in the United States currently. So it's not surprising to me that the increasing rent prices, really ridiculous college tuition fees, increasing gas prices, whatever, different ways that cause you to not support capitalism. So that's not surprising to me. But what is surprising to me is this: 57% believe the Declaration of Independence has more freedoms or guarantees more freedoms than the Communist Manifesto. Another way of looking at this is 43% believe the Communist Manifesto gives you more freedoms than the Declaration of Independence, which is, wow. I'm not sure I agree with that statement. But anyways, 20% support abolishment of private property, and 70% of surveyed were likely to vote for a socialist candidate. And so here, if you're more of a visual person, I've made these graphs here in Microsoft Excel. Basically, I just converted the percents into numbers. So 57% is 2,100 is like about 1,200. So you can just basically see how much more people support the Declaration of Independence, or how many more are likely to vote for a social candidate. And this one I made here, it was another question that was answered by this survey, and they asked, isn't economic inequality a major issue? And I believe it was like 93% of people said it was, 7% said they didn't, which, again, not too surprising. It is a major issue, I would say. Now, let's compare this to the older generation. So, this survey also considered the baby boomers and people over the age of 75. So what it found is that 7% of the baby boomer generation support communism, or you can see here in this graph. 4% of people over the age of 75 support communism, and only 1% of boomers support abolishment of private property. And so this graph is also a bit misleading, just a heads up, because for some reason it went past 100 at 120 is here. Obviously, still there's 96%, which is a way bigger amount than 4%. So why is there such a difference in the amount of communism support from this older generation to the younger generation? What would you think? Well, the answer is it's just struggling times ahead for millennials and Gen Z. Here you can see a graph of healthcare costs. So this will be the baby boomers around here. And here is where we're at now. And you can see the healthcare prices. The national health expenditures, percent of GDP, have just increased continuously. But besides that as well, large amounts of student debt for millennials and Gen Z, high and increasing rent prices. As you can see here, we have this graph of the rent trades, and well, pretty much every single state, bar a few, has increased rent for a one bedroom. One bedroom, it's just one bedroom, and you have a $1,777 increase in California. Which is kind of crazy to me. It's also scary. So yeah, another reason the older generation supports, though, is, again, they lived through the Cold War, experienced the Red Scare, all of these political cartoons, propaganda, whatever you want to call it, news articles about, communism bad, the Red Menace, and all the containment mindsets, because, why did the Vietnam War, the very controversial Vietnam War, happen is because the United States was in the containment mood, and they're trying to stop the spread of communism. So as you can see here, this red iceberg political cartoon from 1960 shows how these communist parts of the world, Poland, Hungary, North Korea, etc. Here's Uncle Sam coming in. It's going to stop them. So what exactly is the Eastern Bloc, the focus of this lecture? So the Eastern Bloc consists of countries in Eastern Europe mostly, besides like Czech Republic and East Germany. I don't know, some people don't consider that the Eastern Europe. Many places have been affected by communism here, specifically all of these ones here, because this is the former Soviet Union countries. They've all been affected by communism. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be focusing on these countries. We're not going to be talking about Albania or Slovakia in this lecture. Now, I could definitely, there's a lot to talk about those countries, but we're going to skip that, and we're going to talk about the likes of Belarus, Ukraine, Lithuania, etc. So why do people struggle in the Eastern Bloc? Well, number one, corruption. Corruption is a really big problem in some countries like Belarus, Moldova, Ukraine, Russia, etc. And so abuse of public office is a serious threat in some of these countries. It has a damaging effect on the public's belief in the government. So what does that mean? Well, basically, whenever a political official is abusing their power, they're stealing money from the people, it's not really a surprise that the public is not going to believe in the government. So when this has been happening in the transition to democracy, it's led to some people in the Eastern Bloc have like a lose faith in democracy and lose faith in that transition. So embezzlement opportunities opened up when the economic restructuring was attempted. So of course, they're trying to convert from the from the communist system to capitalism. And so a lot of embezzlement opportunities opened up. Like I said, the government is stealing money from the people, and yeah, so that this of course leads to a struggle to transition to a democratic government. And another reason that some people struggle is effects of late Soviet projects in certain areas. For example, the Baikal-Amur mainline, or what I like to call it, BAM, because that's just much more fun to say than the Baikal-Amur mainline. Just BAM. And yeah, we're going to talk about that later. And here we have a picture of a lovely commie block. Just look at these houses in a row. So, first let's take a look at a policy that you can find in the Eastern Bloc. Specifically, we're going to take a look at universal healthcare, right? America really wants to get some universal healthcare because, well, let's face it, it is really expensive here. But is universal healthcare always successful? And is it actually free in the Eastern Bloc? So this is a policy that's carried over from the Soviet Union. And so let's have a look at it. Well, here we have our universal healthcare. Here's a Ukrainian hospital. And here we got a dude, another guy, right next to each other. Look at this. Look how much space there is. So what if they have like a contagious disease or like COVID and they're sitting this close to each other? It's just absolutely not good. Here we have elderly COVID patients. Now, as you can see, 1 patient, 2 patient, 3, 4. There's a lot of things to look at. Look at this paint job that hasn't been updated since the 80s. Look at this outdated technological equipment. I mean, look good on them. They're wearing masks, I guess. I mean, though they're barely 6 feet apart, if that. This floor hasn't been updated since 1977. Not literally, but you know what I'm saying. So let's take a look at an actual video. And this guy's experience in Lviv, which is one of the nicer cities in Ukraine. And so let's take a look at what this guy had to go through when his dad contracted COVID. If it loads. Hello? Alright, good.
Ти попадаєш в жах, фільм жахів. Це темне, сире, холодне приміщення, палата, не знаю, як інші палати. В нас була палата холодна. На цей момент на вулиці була низька температура, відповідно, грибок, всі стіни під ранок просто ставали вологими, мокрі плями на стінах. момент, коли нас клали, нам говорили про те, що а хто буде з ним, нас питали, а хто буде з ним сидіти? З ним хтось буде сидіти, тому що в нас немає персоналу. І я погодився. Особисто я бачив 2 випадки, коли люди, яких не привезли, які прийшли в лікарню, їх поклали під кисень і сказали, ну от ми почнемо лікування тільки тоді, коли будуть препарати. І от люди вставали, виходили, гуляли, бродили по території лікарні і намагалися додзвонитись до когось, говорили про те, що бери все, що є, беріть гроші і привозьте, тому що тут так не лікують, тут безкоштовно не лікують.
Що стоїть питання, що пацієнту потрібно забезпечити саме ту допомогу, яку він потребує, саме ті препарати, які, на думку медика, в даній ситуації, в його стані будуть для нього найбільш ефективними, тоді медики приймають рішення, відповідно, призначити ті препарати, які не входять до цього пакету.
Зараз є питання з лікарськими засобами. Ми будемо розбиратись, ми йдемо з керівництвом, подивимось, щоб якомога менше або взагалі не купували з лікарських засобів.
So there we have that hospital and leave. Lovely, right? Exactly what it looks like on the photos. Like, as you can see at the start, they had the essentially clickbait advertising of what the hospital actually looked like, and then Rahman in the video records the hospital and basically just exposes them. But anyways, we saw all that. And so, one question might have popped up in your head: why did it say that Roman had to pay for the treatment and not his father? So here you're looking at $80, right? So let's do some math. So $1 is about 27 hryvnia. This number fluctuates. I think whenever they got the initial calculation, it might have been like 24, but nowadays it's 27 hryvnia. So anyways, the medicine, they estimate it to be costing $1,000. And so that's about 27,280 hryvnia. Now, so this is $80, like I said. What are you guys looking at here? Guess what this is. This is also $80 is about 3,000 hryvnia, which is the average monthly pension in Ukraine. And so, if Roman's father is earning this, or 3,000 hryvnia, every month, well, it's going to take him like 9 months to pay it off, because this is assuming that he doesn't pay for any other things. He doesn't pay for any food, he doesn't pay for travel, or whatever. He spends money on nothing. He only takes in the pension, and it will still take him 9 months to pay off the COVID medicine, right? So much for the free healthcare, because supposedly that medicine wasn't covered by insurance. So here you can see, again, it's a bit of a misleading map or graph. This one I didn't make myself, but this shows the in Ukraine, the per capita GDP in US dollars. So as you can see, on average, it's about 3,100. And so here, notice in 2015 how it dipped to about 2,850. So I mean, while it's not like significantly lower, it is about 300 lower than the average. So why do you think there's a dip right here? Well, the answer is the Russo-Ukrainian War, which began in 2014. So as you can see, the 2014 right here, but boom, it crashes down in 2015. The effects are felt. So this war began in 2014. The main conflicts over the Crimean Peninsula right here, which currently, if you're paying attention to the news, that Russia's already controlled this for some time now. But yeah, Ukraine and Russia both claim Crimea. Russia currently occupies it. The conflict's still ongoing. Again, if you've paid attention to the news, you see how there's troops on the borders around here. And so these are areas that are basically the most disputed ones right here. And so, yeah. Basically, you have major towns like Donetsk and Luhansk in this area. There's millions of people that live in this region. And it's heavily controversial right now. So how has the war affected the people in this region? Again, here we got the Donbass region, one out as well. There's Luhansk, there's Donetsk. So, how do people get affected by this region? Well, let's take a look at this. I'm not going to play this full video, this documentary here. It's a documentary filmed by Benjamin Rich, or Bald and Bankrupt. Basically, he went to the Donbass region. He did not go to one of the big towns of Luhansk or Donetsk. It's somewhere in between. I can't remember exactly which the name of the town is, but it's somewhere around here. And so, basically, he comes in and interviews people and just looks around at what exactly life looks like right now. So I'm going to play a clip from an interview here, not the full video because it's 30 minutes long. I want you guys to pay attention to this interview because I find it really interesting.
Хорошо, давайте.
Also notice, look at this housing right here. It's completely abandoned, graffiti. You can't really see it on this exact part, but there's going to be, at some other house later on, there's going to be bullet holes on the windows and on the side of the house.
Просто хочу знать, как сейчас, спокойнее сейчас, и как было раньше.
Как раньше? Раньше мы считаем довоенное время, это было раньше. А вот это, и которое сейчас, это для нас это то же самое военное время. Вот 7-8 километров и Донецк. Кто куда стреляет, а мы страдаем. Как у нас на Украине говорят, пани деруться, а у холопів слух имеется в виду, зубы трещать.
So like I said earlier, look at this. It's unbelievable, right?
Понял. А много страдали, погибли из этого города?
И погибли, и вон вот Таня скажет, я бабка старая, я была ранена.
Она ранена была возле магазина.
Да, и вот плечо, вот же видите, тягают.
Пуля
теперь
просвистела, он даже не заметил.
Да не пуля, осколочная.
Осколок.
Осколок. Вот, он мне казалось, вот раз и встрял. Он был вот такой вот. И еще и сегмент в сторону вот так. Как я жива осталась, я не знаю. Потому что здесь же аорта проходит, кровеносные сосуды все. Они все так удивлялись, доктора, как эта бабка жива осталась. Да.
Блин. А ваш дом, ваша квартира, никто не трогал?
О, ну как, у нас все ни одного стекла не было здесь вообще.
Нет.
Вообще. Во всем городе. Окон вот только пластиковые, если только не прямое. У меня до сих пор стоит пластиковая с дыркой.
Понял.
Осколок вылетел. И все стояло.
Тяжело было время тогда. Но сейчас, надеюсь, что лучше уже станет.
Лучше будет тогда, когда откроются границы, когда мы сможем, понимаете, мы жили, наш город, он слишком привязан был к Донецку. Мы без него ничто, мы дыра, черная дыра, яма. Да.
Ну, хорошего дня и поздравляю на 8 марта.
So wow, just crazy, right? Imagine you're taking a walk, you're going to the store. Let's make it full screen here. Anyways, imagine you're taking a walk to the store. You want to get yourself some bread, some meat. Just trying to buy yourself some food for the rest of the week. And all of a sudden, this just sharp nail just flies out of nowhere and just hits you on the shoulder. Just unbelievable. I would not walk around outside if that could potentially happen to me. Just, I mean, think about what she said. It was centimeters away from potentially hitting an artery and killing her. So, and I'm happy that that woman's alive and fine, but wow. Just imagine it's not the only time that's happened, but some people are not as lucky. And bullet holes in the windows, bullet holes in the houses, in the apartments, all because of this conflict. Just because of these countries being part of the former Soviet Union causing this conflict. And this is how people live in this region. I mean, there's elderly people like that woman in the video. I'm not saying that she isn't necessarily living on $45 a month, but there's people like that. That's their average pension. There's a clip from that video that I'm not going to play, but he interviewed another elderly lady, and that's what she said. She's living on about $45 a month. So army checkpoints are found throughout the region. There's a deficit of work because, like it said it's cut off, the supply to Donetsk is cut off, and so this leads to a deficit of work. People are leaving the area to go Dnipro, go to Kiev, whatever, if they can escape to get some work. So, I mean, it's just not a good time over there right now. So, of course, Ukraine is not the only Eastern Bloc country. Let's move on to a different one. Let's move on to pretty old Lithuania. Here you can see Lithuania right here. Stark difference from, go back a bit. That, right? It doesn't quite look like that. This is much better. This is beautiful, I would say. And so, of course, Lithuania has transitioned really well post the Soviet Union, actually. The corruption index of 60 here. We can click here, take a look at it. So as you can see, the best corruption index is at Denmark, 88. Here's the United States for reference at 67. And here you have Lithuania at 60. So they're doing pretty well for themselves. In contrast, other countries, you can find Ukraine right here at 33. And if we search in Russia, well, Russia's even lower at 30. So they're doing statistically 2 times better on the corruption scale than these other countries are. And of course, their per capita GDP is $36,700 US. So this is according to the CIA World Fact Book. This is the highest of all former Soviet countries. And so if we take a look at this again, we can take a look at, of course, number 1, Liechtenstein at 139. But again, for comparison, because I like doing comparisons so you can understand. Here's the United States. Here's where probably you're at, 60,200. So again, 37,000, not bad, right? Excuse me, 36,700. Again, let's look at Ukraine, 12,400. Let's look at Moldova right there, 12,300. Russia, 26,500. So there's some numbers there for you. But however, not everyone in Lithuania is quite living like this. Let's take a trip to Visaginas right here. You can see us here on the eastern border. For reference, that is Belarus right here, so right next to the Belarus border. This is Latvia up here. So what exactly is so interesting about this seemingly random town on the eastern part of Lithuania? Well, here it is right here. Well, some interesting demographics in Visaginas. Over 50% of the population from Russia. How does that make sense? Because this is Lithuania. Here's Belarus. Here's Latvia. But only 50%, over 50% of the population is from Russia. The town's mostly Russian speaking, and the average age of the town is 55 years old. Wow, right? Why is this the case? Welcome to Lithuania's nuclear town. So Visaginas, built in 1975, which is 16 years before the collapse of the Soviet Union. It's Lithuania's youngest town. It's actually created for the construction of the Ignalina power plant, which you can see right here, a nuclear power plant. And so the town was essentially built for a place for the workers to live while they were building the power plant. And so, like a lot of different areas, like let's take it for the California gold rush, right? All the gold miners mining gold, and they popped up with a lot of those towns in the area. So exactly the same concept applies in the Soviet Union. Different projects and stuff led to towns like this popping up. So this town is intended to provide, basically the town was intended to create the Ignalina power plant, which it was created. And so this power plant would be the window of Soviet progress to the west, because again, as you can see, this is as far west as you could pretty much go with Lithuania, if the Soviet Union. And so it was going to provide, it did provide 70% of Lithuania's electricity in 1983. But notice my keywords here. It was intended. What do you think that means, huh? Well, it wasn't a window of Soviet success. It was a window of Soviet failures. After the Soviet Union collapsed, well, there's no more funding to support the power plant. And so there's also no more funding in the country. So what does Lithuania do? Lithuania, right, is completely cash-strapped currently. So they said, well, let's go join the EU, because the EU, they can help us provide us financially, and they can help us transition to a democratic form of government, because, well, Lithuania, first of all, also it's important to know that Lithuania, Latvia, that area was one of the first to leave the Soviet Union. Or I think it was actually the first. But anyways, they looked to join the EU to get some help financially. And so the EU said, all right, yeah, we'll let you guys in. But there's one term that needs to be applied. not saying this is the only term, but one of these terms that they needed to fulfill to join the EU, is that the Ignalina power plant must be shut down. So why exactly does the power plant need to be shut down? What was wrong with it? Well, honestly, in theory, nothing was wrong with it, but when this happened, the Chernobyl explosion of 1986 was still relatively fresh in the minds of the EU, and they were concerned about the safety of the Ignalina power plant. So it says here the Ignalina power plant's reactors were actually 3 times more powerful than Chernobyl's, so in theory, if it did potentially explode or have another meltdown, it could have been bad news for the countries surrounding Lithuania, even more so because it could have spread further than the Chernobyl radiation spread. And so, of course, the power plant was shut down. And so how does this affect good old Visaginas? Well, it's a loss of jobs, obviously. 5,000 people were once employed by this power plant. Now there's 1,900. Eventually there's going to be 0 because by, in the 2030s, I believe it's supposed to be demolished or something like that. So eventually there's going to be 0. So, in contrast, in Visaginas, the average salary is 700 euros a month. The rest of the country in Lithuania, it's 1,300. So there's much significantly lower wages. Excuse me. So the population, people are leaving. They said there's no jobs. They got to get out if they can. 1989, 32,438 people lived here. In 2019, there were 18,700. 15,000 people have left the town since 1989, which is crazy. Essentially, the Visaginas bubble was burst. Like I said earlier, here, over 50% of the population is from Russia. Most of the town is Russian-speaking. A lot of people came in from Russia to build this power plant. And so they made an ethnic enclave in here, essentially. And this bubble got burst whenever the power plant shut down because, well, they basically they could rely on themselves. Now they can't. It's difficult for progress to be made without the main reason the town was created. So, really, as you can see, this is a picture of Visaginas. This town has not changed much since the 80s. In fact, I don't know if it changed at all in some parts of the town. But yeah, it also creates a bit of an identity crisis, as many people don't speak Lithuanian. Like I said, they speak only Russian, some people. And so they're in the middle of Lithuania. Not really, they're more to the east. But these people don't feel like they belong. They more strongly identify with Russia. And so they're sitting in Lithuania. They don't feel like they belong in this country. Lithuanians are skeptical because, like I said earlier, Lithuania wants nothing to do with the Soviet Union. Like, for example, if you go to Russia or Ukraine or Belarus, you can find street names like Lenin Street or Karl Marx Street or something like that. You can find statues and stuff. If you go to Lithuania, you can't find any of that because Lithuania wants nothing to do with their Soviet past. And so Lithuanian citizens and the government is a bit skeptical of this town, especially in recent times with how Russia's been on the Ukrainian border. Not saying that that's fair skepticism of this town. I'm just saying that that's how it is. And so, not only do these people don't feel like they belong, the Lithuanian citizens in other towns don't really feel like this town should be here. And so, it's kind of awkward like that. But, is it all really that bad for this town? Actually, there's a new tourism industry, right? Because that's exactly what you thought of. You thought of the tourism industry of Visaginas. Because when I showed you these pictures, you said, I'm booking a flight on American Airlines right now. We're going to Visaginas. I don't think you did. But actually, there is a quote-unquote tourism industry here because of the Chernobyl documentary. A lot of people have definitely heard of this documentary. It's very famous. But actually, the parts of the reactors were filmed in the Visaginas Ignalina power plant because, well, obviously you're not going to go film in the Chernobyl power plant. You're not going to do that because it's dangerous. You're going to get sick or die. And so actually people have started visiting the power plant. And so 4,025 people visited the Visaginas power plant in 2019, which is kind of interesting. I never would have considered that this town would have been a potential tourist destination, but hey, live by the power plant, die by the power plant. Of course, also, not mention another way this town could potentially recover is that it's like a very pretty scenery on this area, as you can see, good nature and stuff. And so potentially they're looking at different aspects to stop basically relying on the power plant that's no longer really a power plant. But yeah, so this is just one of the ways that a failed Soviet project affects these people. These people are stuck basically 40 years in the past. It's just not a good way of life. As you can see, all the stats I proved in the pictures I showed you, the people's lives are still affected. So let's move on to Russia. Welcome to good old sunny Russia, right? Sunny. And so, what are we going to take a look? Where are we taking our trip today? The Baikal-Amur main line. So we're taking a trip everywhere because this is a big old rail line. It's 2,200 miles long, or 3,600 kilometers, whichever one you prefer. Probably miles, right? So the point of this rail line was supposed to connect Siberia, which is up here. Actually, let me see here. So we have the Baikal-Amur main line, just so you can see. Main line, goodness, that's a mouthful. I'm just going to say the BAM now. The BAM, which is much more fun to say. Picture it right here. Here's the green of the BAM. Connects here as well. But anyways, the BAM is supposed to connect Siberia to the rest of Russia. Why would you be interested in connecting Siberia to the rest of Russia? Well, because of all the natural resources, especially the nuclear ones, like uranium, etc. But yeah, these natural resources were going to make Russia and the Soviet Union rich. Did it quite do that? Nah, I'm not so sure it did, because it actually nearly did the opposite. It cost 15 billion US dollars to construct, and it nearly bankrupted the Soviet Union in the process. So, yeah, Brezhnev, who was the leader during this project's time, said this would show developed socialism to the Western world. Does that sound familiar? I think it kind of does, right? With the Visaginas power plant. Did it? It didn't really show it. But hey, it is beautiful. Look at these mountains. Just absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, today the BAM is inefficient. It's still not finished. They have not finished building the BAM. There's parts of it that you can go around. If you take a trip, which you could if you wanted to for whatever reason, take a trip on the whole entire train. And some people do that. And you would notice, first you would notice this beautiful scenery, right? You could also notice all of the unfinished buildings and the abandoned machinery for projects that never got finished. Because, well, they just ran out of money because the Soviet Union collapsed. And so some parts of it were not finished, and they kind of essentially just threw it away. And there's work being done to eventually finish these. But the towns that are popped up because of the BAM have a lack of work now. There's not much to do. I mean, you have a railroad that's going through your town, but there's not really resources coming in. And so, again, the population is declining. People are moving to like Moscow, St. Petersburg, etc. And they're leaving these towns, and I mean, it's just not ideal, especially if you're so isolated in the east. But at least you're not now connected with a railroad, right? This one could be. It's not as the BAM isn't as bad as an impact as Visaginas is. So finally, I wanted to take a look at closed cities. Now, closed cities are not exactly only Soviet Union topic. For example, take the Manhattan Project, which was like, I forgot what the name of basically like they built like a fake town and they were doing stuff underneath. This is slightly different. So closed city in the Soviet Union. It's actually recently discovered that there's 42 of these closed cities. And so the USSR hid these cities from maps, and so no one knew about them except the people working there. Or if you, for some reason, randomly just found it, you're like, what is this place? And then, well, you found the closed city. Anyways, cities were restricted to certain groups of people. You needed a permit to get in if you're an outsider. If you did not have a permit, you're just not going to get one. And there's barricades of police officers sitting there, and they would just turn you away and just send you back to wherever you came from. And so what do these towns consist of? It was usually miners, researchers, scientists, which was often tied to uranium mining or nuclear research. And so these residents in these closed cities lived in luxury with high wages, good education, nice housing that were commie blocks. They had individual houses, times nicer apartments, etc. They had the best medicine. They had soccer games played. They had houses of culture with plays. People would come perform for these people. And essentially, it was just a rich, nice place to live, right? Well, not anymore. What happened to these towns? Well, they're just left in ruin now. The schools, the shops, etc. They're mostly closed. There's no more people There's no plays coming in. The soccer fields are abandoned except for the kids in there to come play on them if they wanted to. There's no work. People have to leave to other towns in search of work. elderly people are stuck in the town. They reminisce of the past of the Soviet Union. They say it was better. It was much happier times than now. So a specific closed city to look at, if you're interested in. I'm not going to play this video again for time's sake, but one specific closed nuclear city was Mily Su. Now, Mily Su is not quite on the Eastern Bloc. It's in Kyrgyzstan, which actually I forgot to add it. Let me take you on a Google Maps picture of where Kyrgyzstan is, just for reference. It's a nice mouthful to say, right, isn't it? Here's Kyrgyzstan. If we zoom out, here's Tajikistan. Here's China. Here's the Eastern Bloc out here. Anyways, let's go to present again. Mily Su, right? So once upon a time, this was a farming community. It was a small little farming town. People just self-sustained themselves eventually. However, in the 1930s, some geologists discovered uranium in the hills next to the town. And so, as soon as they discovered this, the people of Mily Su essentially turned it. They were like, no, you guys are not going to be farming here anymore. We're going to use this town to mine uranium. And so Mily Su becomes a closed city. And so now this was initially good for the people of Mily Su, like I said, because the closed cities, people lived in luxury, the fancy shops, whatever. And so all these things are built. And here in the bottom right, here's a picture of Mily Su now. Here is a lovely fancy supermarket back in the day. As you can see, we have pictures that haven't been changed for ages. Here's the rusted doors. Obviously, this is a supermarket that is closed. I mean, right. I don't need to explain that one, but now people are stuck in the city just because they really just abandoned all the nuclear projects. There's no need for the uranium mining to happen. But also, one thing that is not mentioned here, and since the hills of Mily Su, they're used for uranium mining, there's a lot of pollution because of radiation and stuff. And so, yeah, just again, another lovely example of how some people are living all across the Soviet Union just because of communist projects and ideas. So here, a summary of this lecture here. Many young Americans are beginning to support communism and socialism over democracy. People are still feeling the effects of communism all around the Eastern Bloc or in Kyrgyzstan. Corruption has halted democratic transitions in many places, and many socialist Soviet projects were failed nuclear projects. Because, like I said, the ones we looked at, the BAM wasn't necessarily a nuclear project, but it was designed to get you some resources from Siberia, definitely some uranium from there. But yeah, Visaginas, the nuclear power plant project, left the city in 40 years in the dust. And Mily Su, again, probably even worse than Visaginas. Just nothing's been changed. It's just abandoned and ugly now. So yeah, I hope this lecture was enjoyable to you guys. And so hopefully in the future we can make some more of this. This is something that was interesting. I'll